The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Although our name is Lucy's Retired Surfers Bar and Restaurant, there's nothing tired or retired about anything we do. Meet Me at Lucy's has been our slogan and battle cry for nearly 3 decades in New Orleans. Located in the heart of the Warehouse District, Lucy's has truly been the destination spot for nearly every occasion. Whether it's happy hour after work, before and after Saints and Pelicans games, or just a delicious bite to eat at all hours, Lucy's is the perfect place to meet up, hang out, and unwind for a great time. And while you're there, you should try one of our signature surfing cocktails, like the Shark Attack or Blue Whale. And for the truly courageous, our famous Scorpion Tequila Shot. Remember, Meet Me at Lucy's is our slogan, but don't forget to bring your favorite pooch, because our lifeguard chair is always open. So here's the bottom line. It's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and I cannot wait for this very special show. I know I seem to say that every week, but the shows seem to get better and better with the guests. This week, I cannot wait because we have Jim Dombrowski, the very first pick of the Saints draft when they had the Jim Mora, Jim Finks, Tom Benson era when they went on that great run of success from 1986 on to 2003 or so. He played 11 years starting with the New Orleans Saints and one of the great offensive linemen in this team's history, certainly a Saints Hall of Famer, etc. But that's not it. I have Kate Adams from the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. We're going to talk some Saints and LSU football with her. And guess what? Less than 72 hours after the man was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, there's only been 3 of them. Ricky Jackson with the Saints, obviously, Willie Roaf, and now Morten Andersen, the Great Dane. He'll be joining us right here on Primetime Sports. I cannot wait for this. Morten is such a gentleman and so beloved in the city of New Orleans. He had a 25-year career, 13 here in New Orleans, 8 with the Falcons, 2 with the Chiefs, and 1 with the Giants and Vikings as well. We cannot wait. That's coming up. Also, but speaking of Saints, how about this? This past Sunday, for the second time in 3 years, the New Orleans Saints practiced, well, at Tulane's Ullman Stadium. And it was a night practice, and I got to tell you, the attendance was fantastic. Well over 5,000, maybe 6,000, 7,000 folks in the stands. This is a great time to get autographs, fun time to be around, and it was just a pleasant experience for everybody involved. Saints, please keep doing stuff like that. That is great for the fans to get that kind of closeness. You can do it at training camp, but this is something special. Hey, you know, 18 months ago we started the show on WLAE, and we are very proud to be affiliated with them. But 6 months ago, CST, they picked us up, and we formed a partnership with them, and we are very proud to have CST as part of our family. And it all started for them 15 years ago on October 28th, 2002. The sports landscape in Louisiana was altered when Cox Communications at CST launched the state's first and only 24-hour regional sports network. And with a push of a button, Cox Sports Television reached 400,000 customers, and they've never turned back. And now it's 15 years later, CST has grown exponentially. And to mark the 15 years as the Gulf Sports South leader, CST is giving their viewers an opportunity to look back at all the great sports stories and events covered by this great network. CST began their weekly countdown of the top 15 moments covered by the network since their launch in 2002, Hey, moment 15, that was the crowning of the LHSAA state champions year after year. CST, hey, they have made a home to the pinnacle of achievement of honor for hundreds of high school student athletes. Number 14, the Wally Pontiff Jr. Classic. Hey, that's the annual tribute for the great former LSU baseball standout, Wally Pontiff Jr. Hey, don't forget number 13. You remember when the Hornets, now Pelicans, returned to New Orleans and after Hurricane Katrina and an extended stay in Oklahoma, Hey, the Hornets returned to New Orleans to face a red-hot Kobe Bryant. And who could forget number 12? The Saints reached the 2006 NFC Championship game in Chicago, and CST was there live for the pre- and post game. We're going to have the countdown for the next 11 weeks. We'll get you that. But coming up next on WLE and CST, it's Primetime Sports. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Primetime Sports, and like I said in the open, this is a very, very special show for a couple of reasons. One, we have Morten Andersen coming on later in the show. Less than 72 hours ago, he was only the third full-time Saint inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Obviously, the others, Willie Rowe from Ricky Jackson. Yeah, we had parts of some others, the great Jimmy Taylor, obviously Doug Atkins, and then a couple early in Morton's career. Obviously, you have Earl Campbell and, of course, Kenny Stabler. But those are the three. He's coming up. And we also have some LSU and Saints talk with Kate Jackson, who also worked – Kate Adams, who also works with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. She's been a broadcaster since 2011. So we're going to get in what's the latest with the LSU Tigers and touch on the New Orleans Saints as well. They just had practice at Tulane's Ullman Stadium. But my next guest, I've been looking forward to this for over a year. I've had some of his line mates, Stan Brock. I've had Steve Cork, Brad Edelman all on this show. I've had people he blocked for, meaning Dalton Hilliard's been around. Of course, Bobby Hebert, people he had to practice against. Ricky Jackson, of course, Pat Swilling, and some others on that. Saints' great defenses of the 1980s, but he was the sixth pick of the 1986 draft. That's the sixth overall pick of the first round. This was the first draft pick in the Jim Finks, Tom Benson as a new owner, and of course Jim Moore, the coach of their era, and he played 11 seasons with the Saints, starting at both tackle and guard. His name is Jim Dombrowski. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like I'm giving you obituary. This is the life. By the way, you youngsters under 40, this was one of the Saints' all-time great players. Offensive linemen sometimes get lost in the shuffle, but you had a great career in New Orleans. What are some of your fondest memories off the bat?
Really the most vivid memory is 1987, that first playoff game in the Dome, just the excitement, the electricity in the Dome. Unfortunately, the result wasn't what we wanted, but the build-up to that game and the atmosphere in the Dome and the excitement is something that I'll always remember.
All right, before we get into the Saints, I think people would like to know, what has Jim Dombrowski been doing since he retired? It's been 20 years. I know you're in the financial world. Kind of fill people in on what you've been up to.
I got into the investment industry almost 20 years ago, and really what I do is I help people prepare for major life events, whether it's planning for paying for education for a child or grandchild, or helping people prepare for taking care of loved ones after they're gone. Right. So, I mean, that's really what I do, is I help people prepare for life events.
It's got to be rewarding.
Absolutely.
I mean,
I have a much more personal, direct impact on people in this career than I ever did on the football field.
There are many people that like to go to banquets, but this guy's been the star of several banquets. I talked to him offset, but in 2003, you were inducted to the Saints Hall of Fame. That's a great honor. Honestly, I think you're like the 28th player inducted. I know they had a couple coaches and maybe a GM or two, but 28th player inducted. There's only 44 of y'all. That still has to stand as a great honor. You're one of the Saints' all-time 50th team members, and rightfully so. But when you look back at that and you see the honors, I mean, listen, we can go on and on. The Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, obviously you are the Saints Hall of Fame, the National Polish American Sports Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, and don't forget the Greater Buffalo Hall of Fame. And that's probably just touching on it. But the time in New Orleans spent, obviously you're from, I say upstate, you're from Western New York, you went to UVA, but you decided to stay here in New Orleans. Talk about the time you spent in New Orleans and why you stayed.
New Orleans became home. New Orleans and Buffalo have a lot of similarities, and I get puzzled looks from people when I say that. They're the same, but they're different. They both have strong cultural identities.
Right.
Different cultures, but strong cultural identity. The people are very open, very friendly, very passionate about what they do. The weather this time in New Orleans isn't the greatest. The weather in the fall or winter in Buffalo isn't the greatest. But
sure.
It's just comfortable. And we were here long enough that this is what our kids considered home, and my wife and I, we considered it home, and we enjoy our life in Louisiana. And so it was a really easy decision to stay here when I got done playing.
You know what else you have in common with Buffalo? Because you're a great segue. You were tied for the best record in the NFL for a 7-year stretch. People don't realize this, but the Saints were great. They just didn't win one of those 4 playoff games. But the Buffalo Bills, and they had this in common. They couldn't get past San Francisco and some of the other teams. Obviously, the Bills never played them in the Super Bowl, but the Bills and Saints were great during that era. San Francisco was this. But what's it like? Because people don't remember outside of New Orleans how great this team was, but kind of give people an idea of just how dominant, especially during the regular season, the Saints actually were.
We were very, very good. We never got over the hump of winning a playoff game, and that will remain probably the greatest frustration I have had in my athletic career, is we recognized how much talent we had and just how good we were. But we were just missing, a few pieces to get to the Super Bowl and win it. Everything has to fall into place just perfectly. And we never experienced that, but knowing how good the teams were that I was part of, it's frustrating that we never got to a championship game, let alone a Super Bowl. Shoot, we never got to a divisional playoff game.
It's hard to fathom, because if you saw this defense, and obviously the offense was efficient as well. I don't think they get enough credit. Everybody's talking about the dome patrol and everything else. But, man, you had a guy that scored 18 touchdowns in Dalton Hilliard in one season. I mean, that's spectacular. Obviously, the offensive line is working in sync. What I loved about that line that you were with, they just had so many guys that seemed to be there for an entire decade. That is rare, particularly in today's game. But you had the continuity of the guys like Brock, and I mentioned Court and Edelman and some others. But talk about how that helped this team, because, I mean, you guys seem to have you were in sync much more than I've seen offensive lines of today.
And that's exactly what it is. I mean, the offensive line, 5 guys have to act as one. And that's a hard goal to achieve. Yeah. When you play with somebody long enough next to you, or you're next to them, you can kind of anticipate what their reaction is going to be to things that you're seeing on the defense. And you've got a split second to make adjustments. And if 4 of the guys make the same adjustment and 1 guy doesn't make the same adjustment, chances are the play's not going to be very successful. So it's really hard to get all 5 guys to act as one unit, see the same thing, react the same way. And the way you really achieve that is through experience with one another.
I have a question for you, because when I was kind of in my formative, you're only a couple years older than me, but Stan Brock's even a few years older than us. But Stan Brock was like the guy that seemed to be there forever, and he was. But you got to play with him for several years, and then you had this young buck, Willie Rofe, that you played with 3 or 4 seasons. Different type of players, but both great offensive linemen. Can you kind of compare those two?
Yeah, Stan was kind of a mauler. I mean, he never backed down from any challenge, and he always gave it his all, and his all was really, really good. Willie is just otherworldly.
Did you know it immediately, though, when you saw Willie in your first camp? I mean, was it apparent that fast?
You could sense that Willie was just a different breed. I mean, you get a guy that big who can run sub 4.8 40s. That's a rare breed when you start getting 300 pounds plus and you can run that fast. And Willie just had a lot of physical gifts as well as determination and passion. But Willie is really a gifted offensive lineman, as evidenced by his 12 or 13 Pro Bowls and Hall of Fame election.
How about this? All decade in 2 different decades. I mean, enough said, right? I mean, if you're in the 90s and 2000s and you only played half of the 2000s, not bad. But by the way, I have a question for you. You had a great career at Virginia. Obviously, you have to be pretty intelligent to go to the University of Virginia, but 2-time All-ACC player, consensus All-American when you came out. And I know the draft is not as huge of a deal in 1986 as it is in 2017, but it was starting to get big on ESPN. I mean, it was starting to rise up. Did you have any inkling that you were going to be drafted so high? I mean, the 6th pick overall. I mean, you're the 6th best player ready for the NFL, according to, obviously, the people that know what they're talking about. Were you kind of expecting that? Did you get an inkling, or were you a little bit happily surprised?
A little bit of both. My goal was to be in the first 10 picks. And that's just based after the combine and the stuff that I'm hearing from the people that know, whoever those people were. Yeah.
They.
Yeah.
Right.
You knew the team had to be looking for an offensive lineman, and there were just a few teams that high that were looking for offensive linemen. The Chiefs were one, the Saints were another one. I may have got drafted by the Bills, but through the supplemental draft, the Bills picked up a pretty good quarterback by the name of
Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly.
The Houston Gambler.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
they did pretty good there.
Yeah, they did pretty good with that pick. And the only real contact I had with the Saints was the night before the draft. Jim Finks gave me a call at my apartment, and we talked about hockey because I grew up playing hockey in Western New York. And I think one of Mr. Finks' sons either played or was familiar with hockey. And so we just talked about hockey and then had maybe a 15-minute conversation the night before the draft. And that was literally all the contact I had with the Saints.
Well, speaking of Mr. Finks, his name has come up the last 2 weeks because obviously he is a well-known penny pincher in his time, but is super successful. Obviously, he was the architect of the Bears, 1985, great Super Bowl. Some say the greatest team, maybe the greatest defense of all time. But he built the Saints team, and you can't argue with the success. It was 20 years of losing, and all of a sudden they are 12-3 with the strike year, that first or second year, and they're just rolling with 10, 11, 12-win seasons. But both Bobby Hebert last week and Pat Swilling the week before, and I didn't ask them this, but I knew that they were kind of almost forced out of town because they didn't want to play for whatever he was being offered. They said, there's only 2 people that Finks paid, Jim Dombrowski and Ronaldo Turnbull. And they go, that's because he drafted them both and he wanted to look good. So here's your time to rebut that. There's Ronaldo Turnbull, your teammate for a while as well. Both great players, but here, I mean, what do you think about that?
I don't know that I agree with the Bobby or Pat statement, but the fact that Mr. Finks did build the Saints that went on in the late 80s and the early 90s, there's no doubt about that. Probably the biggest tragedy to happen to the Saints organization was when he got diagnosed with cancer and had to step down.
Right.
If he had been able to continue in his role as the general manager, maybe I'm not sitting here talking about never getting to a divisional playoff game or a championship game or the Super Bowl. We'll just never know. But tremendous man. Forget that he's probably the best sports administrator that I've ever been associated with. But he was just a great individual.
There is a reason for a long time that the Dome was just handing out before the Ring of Honor thing. They had just 4 banners. One was the great Pistol Pete Maravich. Obviously, Archie Manning is beloved. Ricky Jackson upset, and Jim Finks. And that was it for a long time. Yeah. So obviously the man knew what he was talking about.
No doubt about it.
And Tom Benson. He's done some great things in this city. He's been the owner, obviously, for over 30 years. When you think of Tom Benson, who's still kicking at 90, owning both the Saints and the NBA Pelicans, what are your first thoughts?
Mr. Benson is a really, really nice guy. When he first got in with the Saints, I don't know how much he understood about football, and I think he was really wise to hire Jim Finks to help run the football organization. But yeah, Mr. Benson has done a lot for the city. Obviously, he's done a lot for the Saints. After Katrina, whether or not the rumors of wanting to move to San Antonio, I don't know how much truth there is.
I think he's made up for that if that was true.
But the fact remains that New Orleans is one of the smallest markets in the NFL, and he's kept the team here for the duration of his ownership, and hopefully for many, many more years. So I got my hat's off to Mr. Benson.
And the Hall of Fame stadium is now named the Tom Benson Stadium. That's pretty cool. He donated $10 million for that. Did you know you're in a select group? There's only 7 offensive linemen that were first round, 7 offensive tackles, I should say, out of college that were drafted in the first round by the Saints. 2 of them have been in the last 2-3 years. Andres Pete, and of course this year Ryan Ramczyk, who looks like he's going to start. First of all, before I get to this next question, what advice would you give a Ryan Ramczyk who's stepping in for Teron Armstead, and you're going to start on Monday night in Minnesota, where it's very loud, as you know, and this is their first game, so there's still hope for everybody, so they're going to be into it. This guy is going to have to be on his game if he is actually the starter at left tackle. What advice would you give him as a former?
The advice that I would give him would be to get real close to Zach Strief and Jari Evans and pick their brain. Both those guys have been around for a lot of years. They've got a lot of experience. And whatever they tell him to do, that's what he needs to do. Make sure that you're as prepared as you can be, both mentally and physically. And when the kickoff happens, just let it go. Just play.
Do you still follow it close?
I get that question a lot, and it's a hard thing to answer. Yes, but nowhere near as close or as passionate as when I was playing. Obviously, I may have been scouting an opponent that I might have been playing, or I had a friend on the team that was playing on TV. And now that, I'm old enough that my peers are now coaches or in the administrative office of the NFL. Nobody's playing. And so there's not the same intensity level for me in watching a game because I don't have a personal connection to the players on the field.
Right, I get that. No, for sure.
So, yeah,
So you're not Bobby Hebert. You're not all over it right now doing it. That's his job.
I watch it. I'm familiar with it. But do I make a point of come hell or high water, I'm watching this football game tonight?
Right on.
No.
To finish what I was saying, the only other guys, we mentioned two of them earlier, obviously the great Willie Roaf, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Stan Brock, Saints Hall of Famer, Kyle Turley, I think is one of the greats. He was out of San Diego State, and more recently we had the two guys we just mentioned, Ramczyk, and then Jamal Brown. People forget about him.
Yeah.
He was good for the time he was here, and he was involved in a trade. Hey, the other thing I have to say, you had to play every practice against that vaunted Saints defense. We talk about the Dome Patrol all the time, Mount Rushmore, Ricky Jackson, Pat Swilling, Sam Mills, Vaughn Johnson, who's coming back on the show in a month. It's not just those guys, but talk about this defense as a whole and how vaunted they really were. Because I think when time goes by, people really forget, at least unless you were a hardcore Saints fan back in the 80s and early 90s, really how dominant that defense was. And you practice against them every day.
And they really were. And they made us better because they were as good as they are. But it takes 11 guys to play defense. And you can't forget about the defensive linemen in front of the linebackers or the secondary behind the linebackers. And the beauty of things like YouTube is you can go and look at the late 80s and the early 90s Saints defense. And if people really look at it, what I hope they notice is the number of players that are around the ball carrier when they're tackled. A lot of times it's 7 or 8 guys. So, think about that. Defensive linemen, secondary, they're all hustling, getting to the ball, pursuing. That was part of what made that defense great, was you didn't just have to beat one guy. You had to beat all 11 guys.
And you know what? And that is the reason why not just the Dome Patrol, but the Frank Warrens and Jim Wilkes are all in the Saints Hall of Fame, and they deserve it. We have a tradition on this show. Give me a Wahoo. Are you still a Virginia Cavalier fan? Because my friends that went there are very proud graduates and very proud Cavaliers, but they love their football. The football has been a little bit up and down over the years.
More down than up.
More down than up. Yeah. Basketball's had some time, but you're a proud graduate, correct?
Oh yeah, and for the people that know, last year UVA got a new football coach, Bronco Mendenhall, that was previously at BYU.
Yep.
And Bronco is really doing a great job to the football alumni as well as the football alumni that have NFL experience, and embracing us and bringing us back and trying to
very cool.
have us impart some knowledge and wisdom.
That's very cool.
To the younger players. And so, I'm invested. The past couple of years I've gone back and talked to the offensive linemen and trying to help them become smarter offensive linemen by sharing my experiences and some of the things that I've learned over the years.
And I don't understand why every coach wouldn't do the same thing. Ed Orgeron is starting to do that at LSU. Again, bringing the players back, making them feel important and back in the program. That's huge. Congratulations on everything, Jim. I've been wanting to have you on for a very long time. I appreciate you coming on the show. We have a tradition here on Primetime Sports. As you see, there's a lot of signatures. Give me a big Jim Dombrowski, John Hancock, if you don't mind, somewhere up in there so I can see it. And make sure it's legible so I can read it in like 2 weeks.
Make sure it's legible. Oh, now you're asking a lot.
So anyway, here's a gift certificate for your time. I appreciate you. Check out with your wife if you ever come. I know you're on the North Shore. You actually did some coaching at Mandeville High for the Skippers. But anytime you come up, check out this place, Chase Delichet. I think you'll like it.
I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank
Jim
you.
Dombrowski. Listen, man, when you play in the NFL for one team for 11 seasons, and you start just about every single game, you're a baller, period. So it's an honor for me to have him on, and now we just need one more on that offensive line. I got the entire 80s covered right here. Hey, coming up next, we have Kate Adams. I can't wait for this. We're going to talk some LSU. We're going to talk some Saints. We're also going to talk about the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame because she's invested in that with Ronnie Rance, who is the CEO and president. But don't forget, Morten Andersen coming up in about 10-15 minutes right here on Primetime Sports. Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Although our name is Lucy's Retired Surfers Bar and Restaurant, there's nothing tired or retired about anything we do. Meet Me at Lucy's has been our slogan and battle cry for nearly 3 decades in New Orleans. Located in the heart of the Warehouse District, Lucy's has truly been the destination spot for nearly every occasion. Whether it's happy hour after work, before and after Saints and Pelicans games, or just a delicious bite to eat at all hours, Lucy's is the perfect place to meet up, hang out, and unwind for a great time. And while you're there, you should try one of our signature surfing cocktails, like the Shark Attack or Blue Whale. And for the truly courageous, our famous Scorpion Tequila Shot. Remember, Meet Me at Lucy's is our slogan, but don't forget to bring your favorite pooch, because our lifeguard chair is always open. Welcome back, Crescent City and beyond. Of course, the Gulf South region, South Louisiana. We are what all sports are down here, and we love it. Obviously, this is football season. Well, it's almost upon us. The Saints have their first preseason game this Thursday night against the Cleveland Browns. LSU is in full swing practice. Tulane, UL Lafayette, everybody's practicing now, and we can't wait for the fall. Hey, we just heard from one of the great players in Saints history, truly one of the top 20 players, Jim Dombrowski, 11-year starter with New Orleans Saints. We're going to have one of his former teammates who was just inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Morten Andersen, the Great Danes, coming up. But right now, we're going to talk some sports, and none better than my next guest, Kate Adams. I introduced her earlier as one of the Charlie's Angels. Remember Kate Jackson? That was a brain fart. But her name is Kate Adams. She is with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. She's a sports journalist as well, trying to do some broadcasting. She's done a bunch over the last 7 or so years. And here she is on Primetime Sports. Welcome. Welcome to the show, Kate.
Thanks for having me.
It's great for us to have you. We met you several months ago. I think they had the Glory Road Tour at all the walk-ons with Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, honoring the great legends. And the one I went to was right here in New Orleans. I know they're all over the state, but guys like Skip Burtman, Bob Pettit, one of the great players in NBA history, much less LSU, and some of these. But I got to see that. But this is your group, the Sports Hall of Fame. You're right in the midst of some of the greats. Off the top of my head, I can see Ed Reed over to the left, David Toms. I'm recognizing Eddie Kennison. Dee Dee Bro was just on the show last month. Kind of tell people what you do with this group and the Sports Hall of Fame, run by, obviously, the president and CEO, Ronnie Rance.
Yes, I am Ronnie Rance's executive assistant for Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. That's a very kind of general title because I do a lot of different things.
And that's a handful of a job, by the way. If you're working for my man Ronnie Rance, you got a lot of obviously hats that you got to juggle.
Exactly.
Balls in the, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
he is a character, that's for sure. But I work for the foundation, so we help raise all the money. And what you came out to was the Glory Road Tour. We did it all across the state of Louisiana just to kind of get the word out about Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. A lot of people didn't even know that there is a Hall of Fame museum. It's up in Natchitoches, by the way. I encourage everyone
It's phenomenal.
to
I've
go
been
up.
to it. It's amazing. It
A
really
New Orleans architect did all the architecture. It's
Yes.
absolutely breathtaking when you walk in. You get to look and see all the different stories of Louisiana legends. So, I mean, it's a really awesome museum. But that was induction weekend. I mean, David Toms was there, Ed Reed, Eddie Kennison, Dee Bro, just to name a few. Actually, Ed Reed and David Toms had a bromance going on.
I bet they
during,
did. I bet they did. Other sports stars love other sports stars. Especially.
Exactly. Well, our golf tournament had to get pushed back due to the weather. There was a tropical storm.
Oh, my goodness.
But so that Friday when we normally do the golf tournament, we didn't have it. But instead, Ed Reed went over to David Toms' place, and they played ball all day. They just went and hit the golf balls, and they just had a blast.
Well, Ed Reed, by the way, is one of the great NFL players, but also a great gentleman. I got to introduce him when he was at the University of Miami for a big award that he won on the college level out of Atlanta, and he came to Miami to do it. He had an all-white suit, and you see your interview in there. Did you have any idea? Obviously, you do your research, but Ed Reed is literally one of the greatest safeties of all time. So not that you're in awe of anybody. You should never be that way, but did you kind of have a feeling this guy was one of the greats when you're talking to him?
Well, I had kind of researched him and looked into his past and his accomplishments, but it was when my boyfriend was telling me how, obsessed he was, and then anyone I would talk to, they're like, Ed Reed's going to be there. And I was like, And when I talked to him, he was just a normal guy. We have a junior training camp with the kids, the Saints and Pelicans helped put on, and he just got out there and was doing all the drills with the kids. I mean, what an experience for a young kid to get to practice with Ed Reed. Can you imagine? I don't even think those kids know who they're practicing. I know their parents are definitely jealous, and some dads out there wishing they were hanging out with Ed Reed.
I'd be one of those parents that would be definitely jealous and want to be out there. Hey, kid, give me your shoulder pads. Hey, real quick, I have to mention Dee Bro. She was just here on the show. For those of you who don't know, if you missed my 4th of July special show, Dee Bro is the uber successful head gymnastics coach at LSU. She is the dean of LSU coaches, been there for 4 decades. National runner-up the last 2 years to Oklahoma. LSU has been multiple SEC Coach of the Year. She's been National Coach of the Year. She's great. But you got to be with her. That's her in the far right in the back. You see her with that big blonde hair she's always dressed in colorful. What was it like to hang out with our girl, Dee Dee?
Dee Dee is just so great. She's really spunky. It's when you're around her, she has this motivation. It's like you want to go run a marathon or do something else with your life. You're like, I can do anything once you talk to her. She's so motivational, inspirational. She's just a good person to be around. And she's come out to several of our events, not just induction weekend. We had another event here in Baton Rouge a few weeks ago called Suits and Sneakers with the ESPYs Awards. And Michael Lewis came out. Dee Bro was there. Paul Maneri. I mean, Warren Morris. There was all tons of Louisiana greats, but Dee Dee she's just one of them, and she really appreciates being in the Sports Hall of Fame. And she even told me herself, she said, look, I've been getting lots of awards and honors recently, but I feel really special at the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame.
Listen, let me give that organization, your group, Ronnie Rance, props. The Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is the pinnacle. I have several athletes that have been on the show that I'm sure are in consideration for it, that always say, hey, Ronnie, give me a plug. I mean, because it's a big deal to get in this thing. I mean, it's a lot of local people, but it's also people that are from other places that come play here for the NFL and other sports as well. So it's an honorable group. I mean, by the way, go back to the Glory Tour. I was in awe of some of the folks, not just the Bob Pettits who there was a time, Bob Pettit, by the way, until guys like Barkley and Malone and Tim Duncan came around, he was known for many, many years as the NBA's greatest power forward ever. But you have like Ron Guidry, Louisiana Lightning. For you guys under 30, he was 27-3 with the Yankees one year. He was a Cy Young winner. He was fabulous in those 77-78 World Series. But guys like Kevin Falk, who basically saved LSU football in the 90s, you got some ballers that are running around with you, girl.
Yeah, Kevin Falk has been great. He's been just with Dee Dee. Any event we ask them to come out to help promote the Hall of Fame, they're there in a second. They want to do anything and everything they can to spread the word and get the word out, because really people in Southern Louisiana, they don't know about it. And so it's just great having them
there. Look at my producer. He puts I mentioned Kevin Falk. He's got the Sports Illustrated cover of Kevin Falk. By the way, I'm going to give him one prop. The SEC's all-time all-purpose yardage leader. He broke Herschel Walker's record when he left LSU. I'm not 100% sure that still stands. I apologize, I wasn't ready for this, but I know if he's not one, he's two. Let's talk about this LSU Tiger football team? Obviously, you're an LSU graduate. Myself, I am as well, I should say. What do you think going into this new era with Ed Orgeron? Just some general stuff. Do you think Ed's the right choice? And if so, why do you like him?
I do think Ed's the right choice. I think it's really special to have someone from the state of Louisiana to be able to be the head coach of LSU football. You know, everyone in the state, they love him. He has this sort of energy and aura about him. When he walks into a room, he just gets you excited, and I think he gets the players excited. He's got a passion for the game that's incredible. He pumps everyone up that's around him. And I know he's probably getting tired of the question, how many energy drinks do you drink a day? Because he's continuous, but it may be a lot, but he does have he's a ball of energy, and he's a great guy.
It's working for him, and I think he's the ball of energy without the energy drinks as well. This just adds to it. I was just actually talking to a friend of mine who was actually a district attorney in a town in North Carolina just yesterday, who was a huge Clemson fan, and he went out of his way, because I was congratulating him. I haven't talked to him since they won the national championship. And he goes, man, I don't know what y'all are thinking, Louisiana, but I think that's a fantastic hire. And this guy has no affiliation to LSU at all. It's just somebody from outside that loves college football. And it was nice to hear, because you hear up and down on whether they should have maybe gone for somebody bigger. But I'm with you. I think this is a great call, a great choice. He's been a head coach. Maybe not a successful one, but he's learned his lesson. And now he's had a couple interim spots at USC and LSU, and he's been nothing short of miraculous, I thought, in turning both those teams back around. So I'm with you in that camp. But who's he going to have that's going to be an impact player on this team? Everybody mentions Darius Geis. Is he going to be the superstar everybody thinks he's going to be?
I do. I think Darius Geis is really going to bring a lot. He is an electric ball carrier. I mean, he went to SEC Media Week, with the team. That was really special to him. He, made some funny comments. He didn't realize the amount of cameras and media that was going to be there that week. And he said that Leonard had kind of told him a little bit about it, but he didn't really quite know what to expect. But he came out there with his pink jacket on and he, looking fresh, and he's really great, and I think he's a great team leader, on and off the field. I
got to ask you about Dave Aranda and his defense. I know you love defense. You told me that. What do you think about it? He's got to replace a lot of great players, but LSU's got to pretty much do that every year. What's in store for this team on the defensive side of the ball in your mind?
Well, like you said, LSU did lose a lot of key players, guys like Jamal Adams, Tre'Davious White, Kendall Beckwith, a bunch of other guys who went to the drafts. But, they've got a lot more players this year. They've got a larger roster. I think they've got about 26 guys. They've got more variety, and they're more versatile this year. And so I think we're really going to be able to see what we've been wanting to see from Dave Aranda since he's came on, and this is going to be the year to see it.
26 guys that are actually competing for starting spots, whereas as thin as the offensive line is this year, the defensive group is they only like 20 to 21 they even consider starting. Now you're up to 26. Great valid point. I got to switch gears real quick to the Saints. You're down in New Orleans. We cover everybody in the state of Louisiana, which we are on CSC, loves the New Orleans Saints. Do you see any position battles that interest you at all? Because right now the Saints have a little bit of uncertainty, much like LSU does. Anything that sticks out to you?
I think there could be a position battle at the cornerback, the opposite of Delvin Breaux. I think
you know Delvin Breaux, don't you?
Yeah, Delvin Breaux actually is married to a good friend of mine, and they just had a little baby.
Give him a Casey prop.
Yeah,
Casey Breaux.
Casey Breaux.
Right.
Hey, Casey, but so they just got married, but he really is the definition of a hard worker, and so I know that they're looking to fill the spot at the opposite
What about,
end.
do you think the rookie Lattimore is going to get it? I mean, because he's the first-round pick, and a lot of New Orleanians and fans in Baton Rouge and Lafayette, they like to see the first-rounder contribute it right away, especially a guy that was picked at number 11.
Yeah, I think Lattimore will definitely bring something to the table. He'll definitely be a force to fight with, and
P.J. Williams is trying to get that job, too. He had it before he got hurt last year, so that should be fun. By the way, the rookies, I know there's, we were talking off camera, there's a few of them that might be in contention, including the offensive lineman Ryan Ramczyk, who he might be starting there. So
Ramczyk to look out for, Kamara, again, Lattimore, all these guys. We've got new guys to just be on the lookout for this season who can really hopefully bring us a good 2017 season.
This girl knows what she's talking about. Not only is she working with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, she's a broadcaster, a young broadcaster that you have a great future ahead of you. And here, have a little meal on us ahead of you as well.
Thank you so much.
Check that out. If you ever go uptown, I know you live in Baton Rouge, but if you ever go uptown, it's on Maple. Between Carrollton and Broadway, as the commercial likes to say. Hey, you know what? Dee Bro's on here. Let's get you on here. I got a few ladies on here. Jalea, the great little basketball player, the Harlem Globetrotter girls on here, and we got a couple others. But Kate Adams, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Just pick yourself a nice little spot.
Maybe
right
I'll
there.
put it right next to my boss, Ronnie.
Ronnie Rance, there you go.
Rance.
Ronnie will love that. Kate Adams, keep her in mind because she's got a bright, bright future in this business, and I'm looking forward to seeing that as it goes along. Hey, coming up next, none other than one of the greatest players in Saints history and one of the greatest players in NFL history. That's right, it's the NFL's all-time leading scorer. Stomach that for a second. His name is Morten Andersen. He's coming up next right here on Primetime Sports. What we've all been waiting for, of course, Jim Dombrowski, one of the great Saints of all time, 11-year starter, and that is hard to do in any sport, and he did that. Also, we have Kate Adams, who was spectacular, just talking about the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, which our next guest is a member of, as well as the LSU Tigers and the New Orleans Saints. But now we have the newest, one of 7 new members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Less than 72 hours ago, Morten was inducted. Morten Andersen, the Great Dane, of course. We had him on right after he got elected into the Hall of Fame, and now we want to talk about the great weekend he just had. I'm sure most everybody out there watched the speech. Morten Andersen, welcome back to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
By the way, that weekend, listen, I saw, on Thursday you were up there in Canton, and then obviously you got the yellow jacket, the gold jacket, last couple days of that week, and then obviously the speech on Saturday, which we all watched down here in New Orleans. But kind of take us through the entire time when you got there and the whirlwind weekend that it was.
Yeah, it really kind of started on Thursday morning when I was asked to make a few remarks at Tom Benson's at his stadium where he donated a lot of money, and they were going to unveil a statue of Tom Benson, which they did, and I was part of the days there. It was really cool. The statue is great, and I think it's just a credit to Mr. Benson and really to the Saints. I mean, he donated $11 million, $12 million, but a lot of money. So the stadium looks great. It's renovated. It's bigger now, and it's absolutely beautiful. So that was kind of Thursday, and then all my family and friends started arriving late Thursday, Friday. We had 2 big events on Friday. I mean, the Ray Nitschke luncheon is extremely, extremely cool. That's gold jackets only, a luncheon where they talk and we just sit there and listen. It was very moving and special, and that's when you kind of start realizing you're part of a very exclusive club. And then Friday night, of course, we got our gold jackets, and that was awesome. Walking through the gauntlet prior to receiving the jackets from in my case, my oldest son Sebastian, was amazing. And then, of course, the parade Saturday and the induction ceremony in the stadium Saturday night with the acceptance speeches were great too. And then a little after party.
Morten, I got to tell you, you were on with a local sportscaster here on Ed Daniels, who obviously he's been around New Orleans for a long time, and you teared up in an interview with him. And I have to tell you, I'm watching it on TV, and I teared up along with you. I think it kind of hit you at that moment because you said, I wasn't going to do this, Ed, but you made me have a few tears here. Can you talk about that moment? Because it kind of hit you, I think, all of a sudden that, once again, I'm sure you've had several moments like this, but I am now among the elite players in the history of this great game.
Yeah, I try to keep it together as much as I could, and I can't remember the question Ed had asked me, but it hit a nerve and touched on something that got me emotional. But I was glad I was able to deliver my speech without, full-on crying.
Right, right.
I was happy about that. So it's an emotional time. I mean, this is a culmination of long careers for all of us. Mine was the longest, obviously.
25 years is definitely the longest.
Yeah.
All right.
So some of them shorter, but all emotional for different reasons. And you have to accept that and give your emotions free room, if that's what it takes.
Hey, Morten, the city of New Orleans couldn't stop talking about your speech and the love of the city, how this city taught you to love life. I mean, I remember putting 3 different tweets out. I put it on Facebook and, little blurbs of your speech, and it got such tremendous reaction. You have hit a nerve in the city, not only with your speech, with the way you conducted yourself while you were here, your continued love of the city. Kind of talk real quick about your love affair for the city of New Orleans and the Saints in general.
Well, I grew up in New Orleans. Those are my formative years in my adult life. I came to New Orleans when I was 21 years old and left a man in my mid-30s. And I'll always just love that place because it taught me so much about life and about how you face adversity with class and dignity and never give up. And New Orleans has had its hard times for a variety of reasons, but one thing to me that's been constant in the city is the resiliency of the people and their love of life and laughter and good food and music and keeping the culture down there intact and staying together as a community and family and all the values that I prioritize. And so it's possible that I hit a nerve with New Orleans, but the city hit a nerve with me when I lived there, and especially when I left. I missed the place more. So it's just been a great love affair for me, and if somehow I made a difference in the city and affected change on a small scale, then mission accomplished. I'll continue to do good work there and help where I can and be back in the city and have a presence. So that's not going to change.
One thing you said in the beginning about just 2 things that struck me, just how life is in general. You don't know what direction it's going. You're a 17-year-old. You just turned 17. All of a sudden they're asking you to try to kick this football. And I love how you just slowly went through the process of, I don't know, they want me to kick this shaped ball and put it on this black platform, and some guy's on his knees holding it, and I see these fannies in front of me. It was just so vivid, but all of a sudden you kicked it well, and that puts you on this process of life that you went on with a great college and NFL career. And the other one was like when you got to the Saints, and all of a sudden you got hurt immediately right on in the first game, and you missed the first 8, and a lot of times somebody else might come in and they start kicking well, and your career couldn't be over before it started. You ever think about these little crazy twists in your life that really kind of defined it eventually?
Well, there are. We all, as people, we have defining moments that happen in our life, and the key is to have our ears and eyes open to them and understand that if and when we grab them, they can affect your life in a positive manner. And that the trying part is the most important thing. The going for it is the most important. And if you just stand on the sideline and let that opportunity pass you by, it may have been the one great chance for you to affect your life. So that was my point to everyone listening is never stand on the sideline when an opportunity comes, whether at the time when it comes you think it's a big one or a small one. You have to be open to it, grab it, and go for it.
I've watched the speech 4 times, Morten, and it gives me chills each and every time. I watched it again last night late. And one thing that stands out, too, is people forget, and I'm going to close on this, people forget about the Bum Phillips era that you played in. I love that you gave such a tribute to him because everybody remembers the winning with Jim Mora. Obviously, everybody remembers your Falcons, obviously getting the most points in history and the great field goal you kicked to put them into the Super Bowl as well. But the Jim Moore era, that was your beginning here. I mean, not Jim Moore, but Bum Phillips. And I was so glad you brought that in. What made you think of him and to give him such a prominent role in your speech?
Because he had a prominent role in my career, and especially in the beginning of it. And I learned a tremendous amount of wisdom from him. And I miss the man, and I liked everything he stood for. And it was the right platform to honor him and his legacy.
And in closing, I can't leave out the second part of your career because you have one of the most famous plays in, obviously, Atlanta Falcons history. And listen, we love to hate the Dirty Birds here, but anybody that can kick a team into a Super Bowl deserves a special place. Real quick, and only about 30, 45 seconds, talk about that moment you had when you did that to bring this team, like the Saints, hadn't had a lot of success over the years, into a Super Bowl for the first time.
Well, we went up to Minneapolis. Nobody gave us a chance against the Vikings, and we won up there. And it was a big moment, not only for me, but for the team, for the city of Atlanta. And I'm very proud of my whole career, my 13 years with the Saints and then 12 years with other teams. And that was important to recognize in the speech. But that moment certainly has defined me throughout my career and beyond, because it was the single biggest sports moment in Atlanta Falcons history, and maybe in close second to the Braves win the World Series in Atlanta. So it was important to recognize. But again, it's a team sport, and I brought that up in the speech, that it's not a me thing, it's a we thing, and that's important to remember.
Morten, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for taking the time. I was at that Atlanta World Series, by the way, and several other ones that they lost. But we can't thank you enough. We love you down here in the city of New Orleans. You will always be one of the great, great players and great people that we will always remember here in the Crescent City. So thank you so much, Morten.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Morten Andersen, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, one of only three. My time's running out, so I got to go. We'll see you next week right here on Primetime Sports. Although our name is Lucy's Retired Surfers Bar and Restaurant, there's nothing tired or retired about anything we do. Meet Me at Lucy's has been our slogan and battle cry for nearly 3 decades in New Orleans. Located in the heart of the Warehouse District, Lucy's has truly been the destination spot for nearly every occasion. Whether it's happy hour after work, before and after Saints and Pelicans games, or just a delicious bite to eat at all hours, Lucy's is the perfect place to meet up, hang out, and unwind for a great time. And while you're there, you should try one of our signature surfing cocktails, like the Shark Attack or Blue Whale. And for the truly courageous, our famous Scorpion Tequila Shot. Remember, Meet Me at Lucy's is our slogan, but don't forget to bring your favorite pooch, because our lifeguard chair is always open.